and as we talked about at the top of the show, it was the longest game time, if you will, longest time of the game at 4 hours and 14 minutes before the crown was, of course, awarded to the Baltimore Ravens. A lot of that thanks in part to the 34-minute blackout. Let's hear your opinions here on 206-325-1420. That's your hotline number in Seattle, Martin Luther King Jr. County, as well as in Tax City. Here's County Points Down, Points Beyond, including on ZTwins.com and on the TuneIn Radio app, 206-329-7881. That's where we find Commando Dave. Game time. What's on your mind?
Hey, what's up, JB and KB?
Hey, so
I hope that's not a trick question, man. You know I'm depressed.
bittersweet, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. You know, this is the day that it's just the end of the line of football season, and a day, man, that I really get into a state of mind of what's next. But at least Big P's crashing the boards, and I'm able to come on and talk it up with you guys. Right quick, let me give a quick shout out to Mary. Flacco may mean skinny in Italian, but it means MVP in Super Bowlese. That's Joe Flack and Flacco to you. And to the game timers, I did pick the Ravens as the winner, as well as Joe Flacco as the MVP. I would like to appeal now to the board of the 2013 game time prognostication, so I can carry that over into my week 9 of next season's prognostication as a credit right now going in for the game time. What do you guys say?
I don't think it's allowed, but yeah, you might need it.
Take it. But
my bad. I didn't mean to go there. The champion is already chirping.
Oh man, no kidding. Hey, you made an excellent. I started with the MVP because you did make an excellent case right there for Jacoby Jones picking up that MVP. He had a great game. You know how these things go, though, as far as the quarterback play is concerned. They're always looking for the quarterback to golden boy and all those types of things for the MVP, and it could have and probably should have gone the way that you just said, JB.
He had the most impactful plays. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Joe Flacco, but that underthrown ball that Jacoby Jones caught that made him fall down, and for him to get up and make that ridiculous
Thank you.
And then outrace Culliver,
right,
who of course to the end zone towards the sideline. I mean, he just knew it. I looked at KB when that happened. I was like, he's got too much. He's one of the fastest men, if not the fastest man. By the way, out of Lane College, of course, and HBCU. Looking at that, and then of course coming out of the second half, we were like, okay, Jim Harbaugh has got to remind the 49ers of why they got there. Has to have, even with that long halftime or whatnot, they had 30 minutes to think about everything that they blew in the first half.
Right.
To make sure that they come out there with some type of focus. What happens? 108 yards later, Jacoby Jones yet again.
Gone.
Two biggest plays for Baltimore. They don't win the Super Bowl without him. I got to go ahead and respectfully disagree, just because I think that the impact player in a football game like that is the guy that has the ball in his hands most of the time. He accounted for 3 touchdown passes. I don't want to take anything away from Joe Flacco. And in fact, he was my vote for taking anything for the MVP as well.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and they both played great games, and I'm not saying that Jacoby Jones shouldn't have gotten any consideration or anything like that. But who had the game-changing plays? There were some that would argue that most of the game-changing plays came on the side of the San Francisco 49ers. That game was out of hand at a certain point in the second quarter. I mean, they pulled the plug in the dome. In that sense, I just think that the pace of the game was set by the Baltimore offense, the Baltimore defense. They weren't as dominant as they normally look. They were able to do what they needed to do in the red zone. But you look at the amount of yards that they were giving up throughout the game, it wasn't that dominating Baltimore defense. The pace was set by the Baltimore offense, and Joe Flacco was the one that was the pace setter.
Hey, you preaching to the choir, I'll give you an amen, because again, I'm stepping over. I'm over here stepping back, kissing myself by just picking the Ravens and the MVP, but again, I do have to give it up for the MVP performance that Joe Jacoby did have, because again, as a DB myself, you may have looked at KB funny, JB, but I'm looking at that at the number 29 funny, and going, man, how did you? The man was on the turf. He got up and juked both of you guys. I mean, come on, that's just ridiculous. It's just an MVP play. And then, like you said, you taking 108. That did change the game quite a bit. But then the funny thing about it is, I guess, where Joe Flacco kind of got back in it, even though he did throw the touchdowns early, of just kind of bringing his team back to finish out that game strong, I guess you could say, because that blackout did have a major effect on that momentum. I mean, when you come out and within a minute and a half, you're up 22 points. We talked on Friday about how all the Super Bowls have just been great in the last 10 or 15 years, and that was the one that was making us all look crazy because it was on its way, as KB just said, to being a blowout, and then next thing you know, pretty doggone good Super Bowl.
To KB's point, as far as for Joe Flacco, I call him Joe Cool. We got to call him Joe Cool just because he was unfazed. Do you guys realize that almost an hour and a half of real time transpired between when Baltimore had the ball last in the first half from when they had it the first time in the second half? Yeah, I mean with the halftime and the blackout and everything, almost an hour and a half of real time had passed before the offense was back on the field and ran another play.
Right.
The other things I think that you guys have to realize, I know that the MVP is supposed to go to the best player in the game, but look at the postseason. Ties Joe Montana's record for touchdown passes, no interceptions during this postseason. Yeah. If there is an MVP for a postseason, which, obviously, like I said, the actual game is really where you're supposed to vote, but you can't tell me that Joe Flacco wasn't the reason that team was able to go on to the Super Bowl and eventually win. Oh, no, and nobody's saying that. Mm-hmm. I completely agree with that, and I mean, the numbers are right there, and regardless of how, inconsistent or how consistently inconsistent he is during the regular season, Joe Flacco has performed in the postseason, especially dating back to, of course, the AFC Championship last year and his whole career, really. Well, I mean, you look at Baltimore's win percentage. Look at his last 5 games: 14 touchdowns, 0 INTs.
Mm-hmm. Well, say what you want to say about Cool. My cool goes to calling Cool in the game Kaepernick, because he came out very uncool, and then was able to, get cool, calm himself down, and get his team back in that game and make it the game that we thought it was going to be. And so you really have to give that guy a lot of credit for, just started. I had a guy yesterday telling me, well, he looks like he compared to Russell Wilson, he looks like he runs a lot more and, is not reading the defense, that type of thing. I say, hey, you got to admit or realize he just started at week 11. And, in week 1 and moving up into the season, Russell Wilson was kind of doing the same thing. So you have to give it to a guy, man, that can just step into the big stage of the NFL and take his team to the Super Bowl starting at week 11.
Yeah, I mean, the 10th overall start, to come in there, I'll say this for Colin Kaepernick, he was making plays in the second half. Let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
But to start off, I kind of disagree with you there, though, Commando, because I don't think that I don't put it on Colin Kaepernick for him looking shaky if that's what the criticism is towards him. I put that all on Jim Harbaugh and that coaching staff. That was a bunk game plan that they came out with. I don't know what they were thinking. There was no innovation that they had shown in the weeks previous with that running game. Baltimore was completely ready for it. Terrell Suggs was ready, of course, basically to take away that read option element. They were cracking Colin Kaepernick every time. He did, of course, have that and made him pay for it. I thought they were focusing too much on hitting the quarterback on those read option plays. It's true, but they didn't take advantage of it. Yeah. And I thought that they should have done a lot more play action and whatnot and really exposed Baltimore by attacking Ray Lewis in the middle of the field the same way that Baltimore was doing to San Francisco and taking their linebackers out. So, when you come out, you hit a 20-yard pass with the first play of the game, and it gets nullified because it's getting brought back because of an illegal formation penalty that we had talked about. Mm-hmm. So everything in the lack of preparation with the coaching staff, and that's where I thought John outcoached Jim Harbaugh. I'll agree, but I will say that I'm not going to make it as egregious egregious as what a lot of people after the game have said as far as the coaching or the lack of or the out-coaching of another guy. I think that other than all you have to do is look at the last series that San Francisco ran. Well, yeah, that was pretty bad. But going back to the beginning of the game where everybody wants to talk about the illegal formation and all that stuff, yeah, okay, those things somewhat happen. But you got to realize that the game plan for San Francisco had to be scrapped pretty early when Baltimore took a 14-0 lead. It wasn't that I believe that they wanted to run the ball with Frank Gore more right at Ray Lewis. Mm-hmm. You can't do that when you're trailing, especially not in the Super Bowl. And so they had to get back in it and give Colin Kaepernick some credit for making plays in the pocket. That's my point. Late in the game, he was able to break contain and get out and use his legs to make some plays. But in the beginning of the game, he was asked to be a passer because they had fell behind. Okay, and that wasn't the game plan that they had gone in with. What you're saying is basically what I just said. It was all Colin Kaepernick. And it wasn't the coaching staff. They turned it over to him. When you look at the third down conversions that were completed, it was like you just said with Colin Kaepernick. He had to do it with his arm. Yeah, because that running game was getting shut down. Yeah, and rightfully so. When you have a lead, stack the box. There was nothing that impressed the coaching staff, Commando.
No, and you're making some excellent points there, JB, and I wasn't really criticizing Colin Kaepernick. I was just basically trying to give the guy credit for staying cool. We've seen quarterbacks just in regular season games, let alone the Super Bowl, who, when the chips get down for whatever reason, they haven't been able to stay cool and rise to the occasion. I think you mentioned John Elway earlier in the show in that one Super Bowl where, as cool as John Elway is, that game just got way away from him, and there's nothing that he could do about it. So, no, your point's well taken as far as the coaching goes. All I was saying is that Colin Kaepernick stayed cool and did what he's supposed to do and bring his team back and make the game competitive. Okay,
I misinterpreted that because I thought that you said that he came out jittery or a little rattled at the beginning.
Well, that's my way of saying whatever it was, he wasn't making plays. How about that? So yeah, I was just using the cool moniker, kind of in correlation to making plays or not. So he wasn't making plays. Sometimes that does get guys in that position to continue to not make plays for whatever reason, whether it's coaching, whether it's, you're not making plays. Bottom line is that KB made a great point that, some of the game-changing plays in that game came from the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers in the second half.
Yep, and to your point, to KB's point, and what I was saying is that the coaching staff did not put him in the best position possible to be successful at the beginning of the game when it was getting away from him. Yeah, I'm just going to say right now, I think it was a bad throw, that one interception that Colin Kaepernick threw, but I thought that the best wide receiver in the game, really, that's how you make an effort. That's how you make an effort. And I've always criticized Randy Moss, and the reason why I've never put him up there as one of the best receivers that have ever played is because he's the best receiver to run down the sideline. Has he ever made plays coming across the middle of the field? Not impact plays. Exactly.
You're making a point that we kind of talked about earlier in the season of something that I saw, first of all, from the Seahawks receivers, but then it almost kind of, and it's just, a few receivers that you don't see it, but by and large, you guys, it just seems like for whatever reason, today's receivers do not want to go after the ball.
You're right. They don't fight for they want it put right on them.
Right.
You're absolutely right. That's why I will credit the Seahawks receivers for, because how many times did we see Golden Tate or Sidney Rice prevent the other team from making an interception because they turn it to a DB at that point? I think that's what KB's talking about. Yep. Randy Moss makes any type of effort on that one. Absolutely. A tip ball, whatever, it doesn't go right into everybody's hand. He doesn't have a clear vision line at that ball. And you know what? Rightfully so, because after every, of course, did intercept that, and obviously that's when the fight broke out.
Mm-hmm.
After on the sideline, Randy Moss got popped the way he should have, for the lack of effort that he showed on that. So, football is a way of course, equalizing things, and that's exactly what I saw on that play. And I don't want to make this the bashing Randy Moss segment or anything like that, but come on, bro. You call yourself the best receiver in the game. That is one of the reasons why I'm glad Randy Moss doesn't have a ring, because that type of you're on the football field does not deserve a championship.
No, you're absolutely right about that, and I stand corrected about what I said on Friday, that the one serendipity of 49ers winning this game would be Randy Moss. I am a Randy Moss fan, but then there are we forget the lapses in guys' games because we get so enamored, and the great plays that they have made in the past stick in our minds so much more. But you made such an excellent point right there, KB. I'm telling you. The referee, I thought you guys was interesting given the refereeing that we saw the entire season. And it's almost like I talked to one of my guys today, he's a 49ers fan, and he said, he put it in terms of, what would have got you 15 yards penalty in the regular season, get you a Super Bowl ring at the end of the season. And I couldn't agree more, even though, that play where it looked like at the end there, where it looked, it was helmet to helmet, but that's what we've seen this season, you guys, of that incidental contact of guys of the DB going for a ball and having the helmets hit. Just be glad you have a helmet on. We've seen a lot of shoulder helmets get in there. We've seen a lot of the receivers defenseless and whatnot, just crazy calls, and a lot of calls that were called during the regular season, like holding, they weren't called in the Super Bowl for whatever reason.
Let me say this. As a Seattle Seahawks fan,
yeah,
and to a San Francisco 49er fan especially, don't holler at me about anything, bad calls when it comes to a Super Bowl. Do we not forget what happened 7 years ago? Okay, that was the worst officiated game ever, and that was both ways. It didn't even matter if you were a Seahawks fan. I still don't blame that on the reason that the Seattle Seahawks lost, because I'm on record as saying the Seattle Seahawks should have made plays that wouldn't even put that into account.
Right.
Same thing with the 49ers there at that point in time. They were calling that game consistently.
Yeah, I agree.
You might say it was consistently bad. You might have they were letting them play. But what do we always say as fans? We want the players to decide it at the end. We want of course, we don't want the referees throwing their laundry all over the field, of course, dictating the game. They let the players go out there and decide things, and there was nothing that changed from the first play in the first quarter to the last play in the fourth quarter. My thought on that fourth is, number one, the play calling was horrible in that last
right.
goal on the 5-yard line.
No, you're right.
Kidding me? You're a Frank Gore on your team. The play calling was horrible. I gone right at their guts, but that's just me. And or Vernon Davis, they were right there, of course, on an out route. There was just no imagination in that. Even getting a sack route, because they were doing press coverage on the side, they would have had to back off at that point, which would have gave a quick curl or something right there at that point. But as far as Crabtree's concerned, what you're talking about, that was horrible technique. That was horrible technique. Let me go ahead and tell you, these San Francisco fans, something real quick here. Referee calls in the Seahawks-Steelers matchup took away 3 touchdowns, possible touchdowns that the Seahawks had. Number 1, Darrell Jackson hitting the pylon, called him out of bounds, even though the pylon's considered inbounds, and a touchdown. Number 2, Darrell Jackson, a bit of a push-off, takes away a touchdown there on that play. Number 3, Jeremy Stevens' catch down at the 2-yard line, taken away by a phantom hold. That's 3 potential touchdowns in that game that were taken away by referee calls. I don't want to hear about what's going on there with the referee calls at the end of the game. If Michael Crabtree actually makes a move off of the line of scrimmage instead of just running straight into the defensive back, then maybe you would get the holding call.
Yeah, let me reel this in. I wasn't really trying to take you all the way back to Super Bowl 40, but what I was trying
you mentioned your 49er fan and his rant.
Well, not so much. I was mentioning an excellent point that he made, quite frankly, a point that I do agree with, that some of the calls that were not called in the Super Bowl, thank goodness, were calls that all year long we lamented as football fans that we just do not like seeing.
Okay, true. I understand that.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I mean, that the helmet to helmet, that was helmet to helmet, but it's like in the regular season. It's helmet to helmet because it's incidental contact for what they called all during the regular season. But in yesterday, they didn't call it. I don't want them calling it during the regular season. Glad they didn't call it yesterday.
Are you talking about the Jimmy Smith hit?
Yes.
Okay, they just lost the ball. Yeah, that was a football play. And you know,
my point is, JB, they're all football. 98% of them are all football plays. That when you have guys that fast, that big, that strong, running at different speeds, at different angles, trying to meet at meeting at the same time at the ball.
Amen.
Thank goodness you have a helmet on. It's not all just because helmets touch. It doesn't mean that a guy is purposely trying to take out someone with their helmet. That's football, and a lot of times guys are making plays on balls like Jimmy Smith made yesterday. He made an excellent play because in a situation like that, when it's 4-down territory, the game is on the line, and in this particular game, it's a Super Bowl title. You have to make a play. You have, as a DB, you are trying to separate the guy from the ball, however way you can, and sometimes your helmets are going to hit, and you cannot be called on a penalty like that. For that, and I'm glad he wasn't. But like I said, throughout the season, man, that play was because chin strap and everything popped up, and so and a lot of times it just looks like something more than what it is, like the Vernon Davis hit against the Seahawks. So that's the point that I'm making. That calls that weren't going on yesterday, going on all season. And it's going to be interesting in this offseason to see how they kind of reel these things in because I can't take another season like I saw this season of bad calls.
I completely concur with that, and I guess the only reason I was coming at it is because 49er fans turn into 40-winers, in some instances yesterday.
Right.
Because there's some that still will not even, look at it as, for the game it is, for being a football fan, not, what a lines you go through, even looking at that Cam Chancellor hit on the second to last game of the season that was put on Vernon Davis. They just look at the fact that it was their guy that got hit. They threw the flag. Oh, well,
right.
That was the call that they've been making all year. So I'm glad to hear that 49er fan that you were talking about. I guess I was talking more from a personal standpoint because there's some that don't have those red and gold blinders.
Right.
Refuse to see anything that happens that could be anywhere nearby. So we're talking on 1620 AM KYIZ, Renton, Seattle, 1560 AM KZIZ, Pacific Tacoma, and catch all your Z's live streaming on the World Wide Web at ztwins.com and on the TuneIn Radio app. Go ahead, Commando.
Well, your point's well taken, and the San Francisco 49er fans that you're probably talking about, JB, are the ones sitting around in a circle drinking light beer and hoping Bud Light, hoping that they turn the labels towards the TV and they're going to get some Stevie Wonder superstition going for their team or something.
Wow, yeah. I just want to make this one statement because I think that the Vernon Davis hit, or at least the Cam Chancellor hit on Vernon Davis, I actually think that changed the way that the referees were starting to call some of that stuff. The fact that Cam Chancellor did not get a fine, and the league looked at him and said it was a clean, legal hit that shouldn't have been flagged. Ever since that game, saw some of the aggression from the defensive backs not being flagged as much as they were before that hit. And I think that the referees, I think the NFL had informed the referees, look, you got to let these guys play a little bit. I know that we told you. Do you think that played into yesterday's contest? Yeah, I do. I think that the Cam Chancellor hit played in. It's the reason why Stephen Ridley's play didn't turn up with a flag. Good point.
It's an excellent point.
At a certain point, the NFL said, look, we're not going to be able to prevent every injury that happens on the field, whether it's a head injury or not. But these guys are playing the game that we have instructed and playing it the way that we have instructed them to play it. So if the little incidental contact between helmets happen, we have to let it happen. And I think that's what the Commando was talking about on that play, particular play with Michael Crabtree. Yeah, fair enough.
And let me take it one step further before I wrap up with you guys. Great point on that. The unfortunate thing about that particular play that it's too bad that they did flag it. I mean, you make an excellent point on the end result, but that to me was a perfect opportunity for no flags to come flying out, and for the league to promote, have the announcers right at that point, promoting the new National Football League and say, kids at home, that was a textbook hit. You know what I mean? And just to kind of get the new identity of what the league, of what they want this league to be. But then you go ahead and have 18 flags. Guys, we're throwing double flags. Have 18 flags coming out, and it just makes it look bad. But you make an excellent point that the end result might have been a serendipitous one.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. Good combo. Any last shout-outs there, Commando?
Man, last shout-outs. Jennifer Hudson looked great with the Sandy Hook elementary school choir. I just wish she would put on just a little bit more weight. I love the healthier Jennifer Hudson, if you will. Alicia Keys, I can't remember anyone, if you guys do, playing the piano and singing the national anthem.
I was mentioning that at the Super Bowl party I was at yesterday.
Heck of a job.
That's talent right there.
No, it really is, and did a nice, classy job. As I said on Friday, I'm not a big Beyonce fan. She kind of wears too much double gear for me, but classy move by her, as KB said, of bringing out the old Destiny's Child for the long-awaited and rumored reunion.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: any rivalry to Janet Jackson as far as Sexiest halftime show?
I don't think so. I think if Janet had broke out with some, new Victoria's Secret stuff, it would have been, something we still would have been talking about. As a matter of fact, we would have just went with the hologram instead of the Beyonce show yesterday. How about that? I mean, come on. See, Janet was fully clothed. I mean, it's easy to look sexy when you down to your drawers. Come on.
Yeah, that's true until the end of the show. But anyway, it is what it, of course it is. Commando, great points as always, great combo. We know it's bittersweet because the football season has ended, but it really never ends, let's be honest. Of course, we'll be talking about off-season moves that'll be
right.
And that's exactly why the Seahawks are in the position that they're in right now.
Yeah, no doubt. Always good being on with you guys, man, and looking forward to some basketball talk, some hot stove league, even though I'm not a big baseball guy. I love hearing you and Dre, you guys mixing it up with him. And as you said, man, a lot of football talk to be talked, because this was a great season, an unexpected season that started off with the starting quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks being Tavares Jackson, and winding up as one of the most unbelievable surprises that we could have ever imagined. So it does lay the foundation for next season for the Seahawks. As far as the 49ers being in the Super Bowl, man, it's just good for the division. When the division was 7-9 and a laughingstock of the National Football League, 3 years later, man, this is probably the best division in the National Football League. And so it's just great that it played out the way that it did.
Absolutely. Hey, Commando, always great points, great combo, brother. Have a great Monday afternoon. We'll definitely catch you on the other side.
Roger that, you guys. Good being on with you. Thank you.
All right, that's Commando Dave checking in and out here on Game Time Sports Talk. No doubt, weekday afternoons from 1 till 3, sponsored by the Muckleshoot Casino in Auburn.